Thank you, everyone. We are so excited to be here this evening with an amazing group of professionals as we learn about self-advocacy and the ability to stand up and speak up. Without any further ado, we are so excited to hear all of this. I would like to let you all know that we are recording this, so therefore this is kind of an interactive. So unmute and show your video if you're welcome to do that, as well as put your information in the chat. Please be mindful that because this is being recorded, please leave out as much personal information as you can. We'll monitor the chats to do the same. But to Lauren, Ruth, and June, take it away.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for all your hard work getting this all set up. We really appreciate it. I'm Lauren Lieberman. I'm a Distinguished Service Professor from SUNY Brockport and the Director of Capabilities in Brockport. And I have my amazing co-presenters here, Ruth Childs and June Converse, and they can introduce themselves. But this is self-advocacy training, stand up and speak up. And the intention is to teach teachers and parents how to teach their students or their children how to self-advocate and advocate for themselves. So June and Ruth have put together this amazing presentation with so many worthwhile, useful tips that you can use. And again, you'll have access to this training slide, but also we'll give you some other resources that are on the Capabilities website that you can use as well. So take it away, June and Ruth.
I don't see Ruth, so I'll start. Ruth, are you there?
I'm here.
June. Okay, good. I'm June Converse. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a retired high school teacher. Got roped into this gratefully a couple years ago and have been really, really pleased to work with Ruth and Lauren to take what they already knew and what they were doing and kind of bring it down to the middle and high school level, and hopefully this summer bring it on down to the elementary level.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Ruth Childs and I'm a professor at SUNY Brockport alongside Lauren. However, I'm in the theatre department, and everything we're learning about tonight is really rooted in theatre practice as well as life practice, I guess. It's super applicable to everything our children are working on at home, at school, at work. And out in the community. Lauren and I developed a self-advocacy curriculum about 5 years ago that we started at the Brockport Capabilities. And then lucky for us, we tricked June into getting involved a couple years ago and really created some rigor to our curriculum and organized it really, really well. And last summer, we ran our new program at Capabilities Brockport. And this summer, we're piloting a sort of refined version of that at 3 Capabilities, and we're really excited about it. So, welcome. All right, our goals for today's session. So as you can see on the slide, this is definitely an interactive workshop. You can use the chat for questions and comments along the way, and then there'll be certain points in the presentation where we ask for volunteers and information or suggestions from you all. So I hope that you can feel comfortable enough to participate. And like Melissa said, just don't give last names or any sort of identifying information because it is going to be shared out. So as it says right there, feel free to type in who you are and where you're from and your child's age. Today, what we're going to do is define self-advocacy. We're going to learn how to apply the 5 steps of self-advocacy. We'll all together practice a mini session, which is a super condensed version of our curriculum. And we'll be identifying opportunities for you or your child or the children you work with to advocate for themselves in the future. So, yeah, I'm excited to get started.
So as Ruth mentioned, we piloted a more container type version. We were putting this in a container last year at Brockport, and part of our planned a product, for lack of a better word, is some videos to interact with the kids. So we're going to show you just a piece of the video that was created last year where our kids are telling us what self-advocacy is. And these are in their words. It is an 11-minute video. We're going to look at 1 minute, but I really recommend you take the 11 minutes because it's just kids learning this process and getting some guidance. And it's just kind of a very rewarding thing to watch. So I'm just going to bear with me here. I've got it queued up. I just got to pull it up. Okay, can everybody see that?
And can everybody hear us? I know one person said they can't hear. I'm hoping everybody else can hear us.
I'm going to make sure my
Chris said
volume.
she can hear. Okay, everybody else can hear.
Okay, so this is
Leanne,
just sorry.
maybe check your.
My volume is all the way up on my end.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is, it's not going to be Ruth. She's about to fade from this, but this is, as I said, this is us asking, how would you define self-advocacy? We gave no script. This is just free form what our youth said to us.
Experience.
Self-advocacy is standing up for yourself, fighting for what you need.
Fighting for your rights and not taking no for an answer.
Knowing where your boundaries are and when to say no to something. Having the ability to talk for yourself, speak up for what you need and what you want, and make sure that you have everything that you need going forward.
If something's not working, you have to do what I'm doing right now, is talk to a coach, parents, TBI, disability services if you're in college, director of special ed if you're in high school. Talk to anyone.
Telling people what you can do and pushing to show that you can do that, and ultimately for them to have confidence in you to do what you want to do.
Telling others what we need to be the most independent and successful as we can be.
There are 4 pillars.
So that's our kids and some of our adult workers just kind of telling us how they see self-advocacy. So we want to also kind of go over a couple more terms. Now, if you see the full program, it's called I hope, I can, I will, stand up, speak up. And we chose those 3 words for a very specific reason. We really worked hard on that. And the first one is the concept of self-determination. Our children, us as adults, we get to determine the life we want to have, right? So that's the I hope. The second piece is self-efficacy, meaning I have a belief in myself that I can. And then the self-advocacy piece is going out and doing what I need to do, so I will. So that's kind of where the name came from. I hope, I can, I will, looping these three extremely important concepts together because they do go together. You can't have one without the other. And so we are really working hard on the beauty is that self-advocacy can be taught. The self-determination has to come from the inside and from support. And of course, self-efficacy has to be learned, but self-advocacy can be taught. We did do a little bit of research, or we tried to do a little bit of research, and what we found is there's not a lot out there for us, but we did find this one article, Effect of a Self-Advocacy Intervention on the GPA of Students with Disabilities. It's a very well-written article, and it did have some actual specific things directed towards children who are visually impaired. And one of the things we read there was that students struggle to meet post-school goals because they don't have self-advocacy skills. And that's very hard to say. So that was really important to learn. We also learned that when they have self-advocacy program in place, they do have some positive outcomes for their GPAs. So that was really encouraging to learn that there is evidence to support the fact that when you put a program in place, you see great results. So we're hoping to get that program in place, that other people can use it. We're doing it for camp right now, but hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be retailoring it for the school environment, for the TBIs, and then of course, retooling it one more time for the parents.
So I remember that self-advocacy, it's not just about GPAs. And when we teach self-advocacy at camp, yes, our athletes are focusing on a sport they want to do either at home or in school or in the community. But when a child has the skills to self-advocate and they know what they need, they know who to talk to, they have their goals, and they learn from Ruth all the tools that they need to persuade people who might say no to say yes. It's really having those tools for life, because it's not always about the sport. It's not always about the physical activity or the health. Oftentimes it's about a job or about transportation or about your rights to do the same things that your peers are doing.
I think one of the things I learned last year in this camp experience, and you saw her in that little bitty clip, she says to me, and her name was Diana, and she says, you know, I don't need to learn how to ask to run track and field. I need to learn how to say, no, I don't want to run track and field. And it was kind of like this wake up call. Self-advocacy is also the ability to set boundaries and maintain those boundaries. And I think as we look around in our world, we see boundaries are hard to maintain. And I'm in this, you know, even more so with children who are visually impaired. So what we did was we took the persuasive speech model and we kind of wrapped it into something that can be used with our kids. Hopefully you got a copy of that, the little 1-page thing. That's just this tiny little piece of this program. So what you're going to see today is 30 minutes. We would normally spend 5 days, 2 sessions a day for 15 or 20 minutes actually massaging this and really getting into it. So just know that there is more to it than what you're going to see today. But hopefully we've given you enough today that you can go tomorrow and go, hey, where do we want to work on this? So what we did was and don't forget, very interactive. Okay. Otherwise you're going to hear the 3 of us just talking, and yuck to that. So what we did was we took the 4-square model. And the reason we went with that specifically is, one, is used in classrooms pretty often. I know I used it in science. I used it in math. If you can break things down into these 4 squares, it's so much less intimidating. And once we have these 4 squares filled in, the only thing you add at the beginning is a thank you and a thank you at the end. So we were really able to get this into one nice space, and it's just so much less intimidating. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through it, and I'm going to hand this over to Ruth, and we're going to get started. Now, if you weren't able to print it out and follow along, just get a piece of paper, slash 4 squares on it, and run with it. So here we go.
All right, so I'm going to assume that everyone has their paper or something to write with. And I think the first thing we're going to do, actually, before we even decide what is, I'd like you to pick a child or sort of create a character in your mind that needs to advocate for something at home, in the community, at school, or at their job. So once you've identified who it is, the character that will be creating this persuasive speech, or it could be your own child or you, I'd like you to decide what it is that this person is going to advocate for. And as I mentioned earlier, you can think about whether it's an extracurricular activity, such as joining the volleyball team or an art club, something related to school, where they sit in the classroom, what electives they get to choose, whether they say, yes, I want the accommodations, or maybe no, I do not want the accommodations. It might be something in the community, participating in a 5K race, for example. It might relate to transportation. Mom, I want to ride the bus home, or I'd like to walk by myself to school. It might also relate to a job. And you're going to put the what in the top left box on the persuasive speech model. I'm just going to see if I had any other notes here. I think that was it. So if you can just jot down something in that square, that would be fantastic. And we'll give you a couple seconds to do that. Thank you. And again, if you have questions, please pop them in the chat.
Or you're welcome to raise your hand and we can unmute you as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, another piece of this first square is what we call a reasonableness review. So this is, I think reality check is too harsh a phrase, but I think this is about setting goals that a child can achieve. So for example, the best way we can describe it is we had this really wonderful kid at camp last summer. His name was Landon, and Landon decided for his self-advocacy piece that what he really wanted to advocate for was to jump off the diving board into the deep end of the pool. And he was so proud of himself when he chose this as what he wanted to advocate for. However, when we checked in with the swim coaches, we found out that Landon could not swim at all. So we had to talk with him about, okay, I think this is a great goal to have, but this summer, this is not necessarily achievable because before you can jump off the diving board, you do need to be able to swim and pass a test, the swim test. So we readjusted, we did a reasonableness review with Landon and decided that for this summer, the goal would be to learn to swim and pass the deep end test. And then next summer, his self-advocacy goal, his what, would be to jump off the diving board. So that's about just help setting our kids up to succeed rather than, we're not trying to destroy their dreams, obviously, but we also want to be able to give kids an achievable goal.
So just before we shift, Landon's speech, when he speaks to his team leader and is told not no, but you don't pass the reasonableness review, is on the video. And just watching that and watching how he has to, because we didn't tell him the answer was going to be no. He had to walk through the process and then get the no or get the compromise. So it's really nice to see him actually walk through it, get the obstacle, which we'll talk about in a second, and then have to figure out what to do from there. So it's a really great, and just to see Landon just makes you smile anyway. But so just remember that when you watch the video.
And I think there's something else I just want to say about that too, is that often when our children and students advocate for something, they're not going to get exactly what they want. So helping prepare the students for the possibility that, it might not work out just the way you have it in your imagination is also a really valuable exercise. I just wanted to ask, was there anything in the chat that we need to address before we move on to the next square?
No, Lauren is doing a great job of answering.
Oh, well done,
Lauren. On the form.
Thank you.
So.
Okay, fabulous. Okay, so square number 2 is the why. And here is in the presentation or the persuasive speech is when we would have a child talk about why this goal, this idea, this project, whatever it is important to them. And it's really, really critical that this is personal and specific. And in many ways, the why is, I think, the most important component, because it's when we know our why that we really commit to achieving it. And the why brings up emotions and feelings in us, but it will also hopefully bring up emotions and feelings in the person you're speaking to. So you're going to place the why in the second square. And I just wanted to give you some examples. I'm thinking of, a child who maybe ran for the first time at Camp Abilities. And what they are advocating for is the ability to join their cross-country team back at school. So what the kid might put for a why is, when I ran at camp, it made me feel really happy. Or when I ran at camp, I was fast. And I think if I could join the cross-country team, I could be even faster. Maybe I ran at camp and I just loved that feeling of running with friends and being part of a team. Or maybe I ran at camp and I got a mile under 8 minutes. So these are really specific answers. They get into the heart of the issue, but I think they're a really critical piece of the self-advocacy plan. So you can take a couple seconds to jot down some whys for your child or for the character in that square. Thank you. And again, I think Lauren is going to be a chat monitor. Thank you, Lauren. So if you have questions, please type them in.
I'm on it.
Thank you.
So before I shift over to the third box, I mentioned this to Ruth just Monday when we were chatting about this. I'm reading a book on my own, has nothing to do with self-advocacy or anything. It's an adult self-helpy kind of book, right? And what she said just this week, which I thought was the timing was so wonderful, was when you know your why, your motivation kicks in. And when you're motivated, you will fight for what you want. And I thought that was so true. So once you kind of tag down deep, then you're able to go, okay, now this is worth fighting for. So I'm going to talk about obstacles, which is your third block. Now, what we're going to ask today is for 3, if you can come up with 3, but in the training, it's as many as you can come up with. So I think we give 10 blank spots for that. And we ask that they check around. What has somebody else hit up as an obstacle? What does a coach know is going to be an obstacle? So the obstacles are really important because we want to be able to go in and go, this is what I want. And when we hear the obstacle, we're prepared, right? And what that does, what it keeps us, it allows us to provide solutions, which Ruth will talk, Lauren will talk about. But what it also does is allows us to be prepared to hear that. I know my mother would always say to me, just prepare to hear a no. And then what are you going to say to me? Right. So I was always prepared for the no. And I had my arguments. And so this is kind of the same thing. Obstacles can be a number of different things. Adult attitudes, right? It can be, well, I don't know how to modify that. Or I'm worried you're going to get hurt. Or I'm worried everybody else is going to get hurt. Or it could be, we've had some drama ones where I just don't know how you could fit on the stage, right? So there's all kinds of obstacles they're going to hear. It could be simple, tangible. I don't have the equipment. Just take a few seconds here and see if you can come up with 3. They can be anything you can think of. And this is where later when we go to chat better here, sharing ideas is really helpful because you're going to know some obstacles that somebody else is not going to know. So I'll give you a few seconds to just come up with 3 and just jot them in your box. And now that you have your obstacles, Lauren will talk about what do you do with those obstacles.
So I'm sure we don't even have to make these up because our kids run into obstacles all the time. And again, what June was saying is so right. Either the teacher really doesn't even know how to include the student in physical education or their after school sport. They don't have the equipment. In so many cases, the teacher doesn't even know the rules of goal ball. If you want to play goal ball or you want to play beat baseball or blind soccer, so our athletes have learned all these wonderful sports at camp. They bring it back to their schools or their communities, and there's always these barriers. Well, what we did was we have a whole page of modifications that our athletes have chosen. So we have track and field, swimming, diving. We have, and we have a whole list on our Camp Abilities website. It's a modification checklist. So when you go to your coach or you go to your teacher, you can actually tell them, this is what I need to be successful. And when they say, oh, we don't have that equipment. Oh, you know what? At the bottom of that modification checklist, we have a link where to get every piece of equipment. Well, I've never seen anybody who's blind dive. Oh, you didn't? Well, here's some videos. So we have an answer to every solution, because so many times adults, as we've talked about, they might not have seen someone who's visually impaired do what you're proposing. And it's not their fault. For so many years, kids who are visually impaired were in institutes, in schools for the blind. Adults these days, they haven't seen them in the community. Most people haven't seen someone who's blind hiking a mountain or going camping or joining scouts or doing some of those typical things that you want to do. So we have to show them how it can be done, and don't stop until you get what you want. And so if it's not on that modification checklist, if you can't find that piece of equipment to help that teacher or that coach, you can always call or email one of us. There's always a solution. Now, I had a good problem. One of our athletes got onto his cross country team, but he was so fast. The problem was we couldn't even find a guide that could run as fast as he could run in the race. And so those are some good problems to have, because I know some of the cross country runners and we took care of it. But I guess my point is that we really need to make sure that we're prepared when we do our self-advocacy, thinking about possible barriers, and then also thinking about the solutions that we're going to give these well-meaning adults, and it's not fault. So somebody, I think in the chat, just asked about where is that modification check. Oh, did you share that, Melissa?
Yes, ma'am. I
perfect.
put the
Thank you.
direct link.
Perfect. Okay, so that modification checklist is on there if you're curious. Now, you can add to that. I'm not sure if blind soccer is on there, but blind soccer is a little bit newer for us, but blind soccer balls are not hard to come by. And we use Handy Life Sports if anybody's interested. But we do have to be proactive. You can't wait and be reactive, because oftentimes it turns that person off and it can escalate and become negative. That's not what we want. We want to be calm and say, oh, you need someone to come and help you. I mean, we've had myself and my graduate students and I have gone out and gone to schools and helped people implement either blind sports programs or implement typical units that with possible solutions and modifications. And I just want to say one really important thing to remember. It's not okay for them to say, I'm worried you'll get hurt, because every other one of their peers is on that diving team or they're on that basketball court. Everybody can get hurt, and that is called the dignity of risk. If that student or that child knows the possible risks and they're willing to take those risks, that teacher can't say, oh no, I'm afraid you're going to get hurt, because it's not their job to take away your dignity to get hurt. Because so many able-bodied kids have gotten hurt in physical education and nobody's telling them they have to sit on the sideline. So if anybody needs more information on the dignity of risk, I can send you some articles on that, because that's really important to remember.
So Lauren didn't mention, you mentioned the modification checklist in the video. So there's also out there, Lauren put together a whole list of, if you're told this, including, I don't want to get hurt. I don't want the sighted students to get hurt. I don't have the equipment. She's given you the answers to that. So that's out there too. So some of that work's already done for you. So definitely go out, and it's on this website right here as well, or it's on this slide, and it's also at the end. So definitely that really helped me guide these kids, and our toolkit that we give the kids during the training, that is in there. So just so you know, the materials Lauren's provided have gone beyond just the things for sports. The other thing I think is really, really helpful, and I've stressed this to my own children, my own grandchildren. So you say, well, I don't know what equipment. Well, you need a beep, we need a beep kickball. Well, that's helpful, but what's really helpful is you need a beep kickball, and here's where you find it. Right. So we want to make it, and all we're putting together here is really wanting to make it easy for somebody to say yes. So that's kind of our goal here. So just know these resources are out there, and in the full training, the kids are given these resources. But now, Ruth, it's time for you to put them to work.
Absolutely. So I think we're just going to go through some of the speech components here. Do you want me to take the first two, June?
Oh, I can. You want me to do it since I
got it?
All right.
Do it. All right. So the first thing you're going to do, even before you get into the meat and potatoes of your presentation, is introduce yourself and always thank the person for giving up their time to meet with you. I think sort of bookending your speech and bookending your meeting with a thank you and sort of a really nice, polite tone of voice is super important. Then just remember, you're going to begin with what you need, what you want and need, and then add in the why it's important to you. And after you've gone through that, take a beat, listen, and repeat back what you're hearing from the person you're speaking to, just to make sure that you're both on the same page. I think we all know often we hear what we want to hear, or we hear something totally different from what the person's saying, especially if it's a slightly stressful conversation. So taking the time just to repeat back what they said and making sure that you understand each other perfectly is really important. Okay, June, you want to take 3 and 4 here?
Yep, I sure will.
Great.
The third one is, now you've already had to listen. So you don't just spit out solutions, because you don't need to give solutions to obstacles they didn't present. So you've listened, you've repeated the obstacles back to them, which also gives you a time to get your head in order. And then you have written in front of you, well, here's the solution for that. Here's how we can overcome that. Here's how we can push through that barrier. And I think it's real important, and I think Lauren will agree, that most people do want to help us get what we want, whether we're visually impaired or not. Most people want to be helpful. So, maintaining that attitude, but listen, offer some solutions, stop, listen again, because they may have questions about your solution. They may not like your solution. They may see your solution as causing more issues to address. Either way, stop and listen. So that's really important. If they come up with obstacles you didn't think of, that's okay, right? Because all you got to do is go, you know what, coach, teacher, community leader, that's a really good one. Let me go back home, get with my people, and when I'm going to come back with a solution to that. So it's not like you've been told no, you've been told not yet, go find something else out for me, please. Okay. So again, listen to what obstacles are presented. You have the solutions in front of you. And if you don't have the solutions, all you need to say is, I don't have the solution for that, but let me come back to you. Let me go talk to Coach Lauren or whomever, and I will come back to you. So that's just not a no, right? And then the last thing, like Ruth said, book in this thing. You're putting the container of respect here. And so you're going to thank them for the time, even if it didn't go well. So it's kind of up to you to, if it didn't go well, to find that respect at the end, because you're going to want to go back, and you don't want to go back with this negative halo going on. So what do I want? Why do I want it? Listen, 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 respond, respond, respond. Thank you. So that's kind of where, that's really all this is. Okay. It's these 4 steps, and a thank you and thank you. So that's kind of what the speech looks like. Now, Ruth is going to jump in though and give you some tidbits to know that are true for any speaking, whether it's a group or one-on-one. So here you go.
All right. And actually, I was just thinking as June was speaking, Lauren and I were recently at a conference in Seattle, and we got the opportunity to talk to a lot of physical education and health education teachers. And a lot of them were saying how hard it is for all the kids to speak in public, to communicate clearly, because so many of our kids have been home because of COVID, or missed a whole bunch of school, have been wearing masks and just sort of not, and kind of hiding behind the masks a lot. So I think that now more than ever, giving our kids opportunities to practice communicating, to allow them tons of opportunities to learn how to interact with another person again. Like, I think we can all agree that all our kids have these holes in their education because of COVID and the pandemic. So just trying to get them practicing again and learning how to speak to someone who's maybe got a higher status than them, or someone that they need something from, is just great practice. So some tips for success. Think about if there's anything else you'd really like to add to your speech. Maybe you have a personal connection with the institution or the person you're speaking to, or another detail that you think is really important. Obviously, schedule a meeting rather than just show up. No one likes to be ambushed. Be prepared. I'm a theater professor. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. You've got to practice. The more you and your child or your student practice the speech out loud, and if possible, standing up, so you sort of feel like there's a little extra I don't know what the word, like,
Like,
yeah, it's like a little more formal, but standing up is really good, and saying the words out loud, not just running it through in your head. It's very different when you actually have to use your muscles to make the words. So that's very important. I always tell students to have their main points written out on note cards. And no matter how well you know the speech, bring your note cards with you, because you just don't know what's going to happen in the moment. You might get really stressed out. Something weird might happen. Someone's phone might go off. There might be another person in the room that you weren't expecting. So having your note cards with you is a nice security blanket. Definitely stand up straight or sit up straight. Speak clearly, slowly. Even if you've practiced your speech 100 times, the person you're speaking to has never heard your speech before. They don't know what you're going to say. So you have to make sure you take the time, don't rush, let them absorb fully everything you're saying. Work on eye contact. That's much more persuasive than someone just having their face down. You want to practice looking out and avoid the ums. Even Lauren had to remind me in June in our rehearsal for this, we were saying too much. So it's just good practice to try to get rid of the ums. Also smile. When you smile, the person you're speaking to can't help themselves. They'll smile back, even if they're feeling crotchety. And definitely introduce yourself. If it's you're in a certain grade, make sure you say your grade so that they can have some context. And again, like June and I said, thank the person for their time.
So one of the things we're doing in the training, in the full training, is the student practices with the person they've been working with, but then have them practice with somebody they haven't been working with. And that person is instructed to come up with obstacles they might not have thought of in order to kind of put them on the hot seat. And the more you can get your kids practicing that kind of thing and kind of being, like shocked with another obstacle, the better they're going to be able to walk in there and go, hey, I got this. Whatever happens, I got this. So as you're beginning to practice with your students, be sure it's not just you and them. Make them practice all over the place. And then you listen to other kids too. I think it really helps. The more different kinds of people they practice with, the more they go in and go, okay, wait, I had the hardest person last week. This is going to be easy. Right. So Ruth's got a few more suggestions here. And then
one other thing I just wanted to say is when Lauren and I first started developing this program, I really wanted it to be like a sport. So I just had this idea that self-advocacy could be a sport. So you learn your practices, you do your practice time, you have drills you practice 3 times a week, and then you have a game where you try it out and see how it goes. And some of it's going to go well and some of it's going to not go so well. Then you keep working on it the next week. And I think if we can demystify public speaking, demystify self-advocacy, a lot more people will find it approachable and they'll stand up and speak up. So a couple other things, again, speaking slowly, listening. I would write listen on the cue cards to remind yourself to take in what the person's saying. Once the coach or teacher has given his or her final answer, it's really up to you to decide what you want to do next. If there's a new obstacle that's presented, like June said, you can say, thank you very much. I'm going to go and do some research and I'll come back. If a compromise is presented, you need to decide, how do you feel about that? Is it something that feels pretty good for now? Do you want to ask for a second meeting? Do you want to go home and talk to a couple people and get some advice? If you get a hard no, don't react in anger or frustration. Again, take a breath, go home, regroup, and then you can decide what you want to do next. And also, no matter what happens, we should encourage our kids to be super proud of themselves because they've been vulnerable, they've taken a risk, they're trying something new, and that is very, very important. Okay.
I really do hope, I do really encourage you to go watch the video because we do show some of these final speeches. And again, they were their words. They did them. We worked with them all week, but ultimately they had to stand there. And when you see, when you watch the video, because I know you're going to, when you see one of the students giving their speech, you need to know they're giving it to someone they haven't given it to before. So they may be giving it to me, they may be giving it to Ruth, but they hadn't practiced with me before. So it is really on the hot seat kind of thing. And I think you'll see how well they do by the end of the week. So now
All
we're
right.
going to have, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're going to put it all together now. And I'd like you all just to sort of look at your paper, look at your four squares, and, you know, just take a second to reflect. Is this how you want it to be for now? And really, we'd love it if anyone could volunteer to just talk us through their four squares and share with the group. You can do that in the chat. You can turn on your video and unmute yourself and let us hear and see you if you would like to do that. So would anyone like to volunteer to share their speech? You could raise your hand.
Yes. So I was going to say the audio will record as well. So if you would like to be unmuted and go ahead and raise your hand. That's probably the easiest way for me to indicate as to who to unmute, but all of it will be recorded. Good question.
Don't be shy. Come on. You got to practice sometime.
If you're going to ask your kids to do it, you need to be willing to do it, right? That's what my high schoolers used to tell me. They'd say, have you done this before? And I would always say yes, whether I had or hadn't.
Right, looks like Rob has
Yep.
volunteered.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. This is Rob. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Thank you, Rob.
Excellent. Hi. So I'm a parent. I'm also super involved in many things in our similar worlds. And so we have a real life scenario with my daughter who is 16, and she is working with our local division of vocational rehabilitation. And I'll stumble through this, so help me if I mess this up. I did not get a chance to print out the square, but for our girl, the goal was to buy something in our local grocery store independently.
Awesome.
And for her, the reason why she had that goal and she came up with this on her own was so that she could be successful as she grew up and became more and more independent, living on her own. And then I forget the other two boxes.
The obstacles and the solutions.
So the obstacles for her were that she did not know the layout of the store for the location of the exact item that she was buying. And it's neat because she used the terms buying versus shopping, because she wanted to just go after a specific item rather than browsing and looking, which she definitely does not like to do currently. And so the solution was for her to work with her orientation and mobility specialist on getting familiar and learning the layout of the store, including the exact location of the item she was looking for. And then I'll drill down even a little bit more, because this was an obstacle that turned into a solution that she didn't even realize, was that as she went to purchase, it was a gallon of milk that she was purchasing. She didn't realize that there were quite so many options of milk to buy. And so then it drilled down into her exploring, well, what kind of milk and what size, and is there a brand or even a particular type of milk? And so then it turned into them exploring together those parts of the equation that she didn't even realize were there to begin with. So I hope that helps for a good example.
Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. Yeah. It's amazing the things you don't think about, right? When you're sighted. You said, go buy a gallon of milk. I'm like, oh man, there are tons of different kinds of milk now, right? That would be really a whole new obstacle, not just finding the milk, but then finding cow's milk or oat milk, or I don't know what all's out there. But yeah, that's a really cool example. We had one at camp. I just have to mention this young man named Joe, and you'll be able to tell when I talk about it. He really wanted to convince his mom to let him make his own sandwich. And when I told him we can absolutely do work on that, the way his face lit up was like, you mean I can really go home and ask for that? And I was like, of course you can. And so we talked through how to do it, and it was just really kind of nice thing. So before we go, before Lauren closes up, I'm going to show you the end of the video. Again, it's the end. And it's another one where the coach is speaking to two of the participants, two of the campers, and it's not scripted. The only thing that was scripted was me asking the coach to ask a specific question, but then the rest of the answer is not scripted.
I self-advocated one of the modifications I suggested, which was, I feel like it'd be easier for me and everyone that was riding a single bike to put the differently colored cones at the end where you're supposed to turn so that they know when to turn.
Did it work for you?
Yeah,
Sweet. And I bet you would help out some other people, yeah?
I hope it does.
Awesome. Okay, so those are two great examples of probably one of the many times you self-advocated, right? So then that's just a small example, right? These were both pretty small things, quick fixes, right? We changed some cones, we got to do our track time. How do you think you can take these self-advocacy skills and apply them at home? Is there anything on your mind that you're thinking, oh, when I go back home, or ooh, when I go back to school, I need to ask about that?
When I'm home, I can ask my grandpa, who's a cross-country coach, to help me condition to be able to beat that time.
Totally. And I think with everything we learned at track about the workouts and stuff, now you have some things to offer him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. I guess the thing that I noticed the most is that since you practice advocating here, when you're in a moment where you have to, I bet you're going to feel a lot more confident, right?
Yeah.
And be able to figure it out.
Resources include the American Printing House for the Blind.
Close it down. So again, the video is really powerful. And at the end there, I don't know if you heard the coach say something about, or Seth said something about benefiting everyone. So part of the training does towards the end, we really start to talk to the kids about how to be a leader. You know, how you can go help someone else self-advocate, how you can listen to speeches, how you can think about others in ways that only they can think about each other. So it's really nice to hear him say kind of on his own, yeah, it helped everybody. And I thought that was really powerful. He was able to make that happen just by learning to go over and mention the cones. And that happened to be that young man's first time ever at camp. So that was really a nice thing to see him have the confidence towards the end to actually go speak to the sports specialists. And Lauren is going to close us up.
Thanks, everybody. So we just have to remember that no matter how much support we give our students, our children, ultimately it's up to them to stand up and speak up. I have parents calling me all the time. Hey, Diana wants to volunteer at camp this summer. She wants to be a CIT. I'm like, oh, that's great. If Diana doesn't ask me, she's never going to get accepted because she has to be able to do that before she can be a leader in our program. What child is going to ever grow up and be independent if their parent keeps talking for them? We have to make sure we give them their voice and give them a voice that's confident and it's going to get them what they want. And self-advocacy has to be taught. It's not something that's, I can't tell you, Ruth and I just validated a whole entire self-advocacy questionnaire, and it's for all kids, because in all of our research, not one research project was done on able-bodied kids. Anything that's ever been done, that's only been done on kids with intellectual disabilities. Every child has the right and needs to learn how to self-advocate for themselves. So the book that we wrote, and if anybody's interested, we wrote a whole entire book called Infusing Self-Advocacy into Health and Physical Education. If anybody's interested in that book, that's for all kids. Our self-advocacy questionnaire is for all kids. And I just want to encourage everybody who's here, please If you want your kids to learn self-advocacy in a really safe, fun setting, sign them up for Campabilities if you have one near you. If you don't, we can help you start one. That's a whole nother presentation, but you can email us. And also, I just want to encourage everyone, in 2 weeks, I have a whole nother presentation on teaching aquatics to kids with visual impairments and additional disabilities. Sign up for that if you'd like to. It's something that, again, that a lot of kids are not taught because people don't know how to teach them. And we want to make sure that people learn how to teach aquatics to all kids, especially kids with visual impairments and additional disabilities. So
And I just want to end, because we didn't really tell you what the program is, but I want to mention it real quick. There's a student manual for high school and middle, and we're writing one for elementary. There's a guide for the parent or the teacher. There's video support. So it's not just this one speech that we just went over. It's kind of like a 5-pronged system to work through this throughout a week.
it's a whole program.
Yeah, it's a whole program.
It's amazing what we have come up with. And there's nothing like it. And that's why we're so passionate about it, because you can't find this information anywhere else. And it's such an important skill that most standards in any field, like social emotional learning, physical education, health education, every standard, you have to be able to self-advocate to meet the standard. And so we're really hoping that people will share this information. It's all free, and we hope that we really appreciate everybody coming. We hope you'll share this information.
I, like, the entire time, I am just like sitting here thinking I'm going through this process with my own child, and we are going to do this. It's just, I mean, it's completely powerful. So I just want to thank you all for all of your information and all of your hard work on this webinar. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.